Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Bio Universe. I am Suyanka and today we will learn our environment. The environment of an organism means the physical and the biological conditions in which it lives. The physical conditions include soil, light, temperature, etc. And the biological conditions include the other plants, animals, and microorganisms around it. A change in any of these conditions can affect the organism. An organism cannot live in isolation. It needs other organisms, nutrients from its environment, and so on to survive. So, nature has provided functional units in which different organisms of a given area can live and interact among themselves and with their surroundings. An ecosystem is a functional unit consisting of all the living beings of an area and the non-living components of the environment interacting to form a stable system. There are different kinds of ecosystem. They can be natural ecosystem such as deserts, grasslands, forests and lakes, or man-made ecosystem or artificial ecosystems such as gardens, aquariums and crop fields. An ecosystem consists of two components, the abiotic component and biotic component. The abiotic or non-living component consists of physical environment such as soil, water and air, nutrients such as carbon dioxide, oxygen, nitrogen, water, phosphorus, sulfur, sodium, potassium and calcium, and climatic factors such as sunlight, rainfall, temperature, humidity and atmospheric pressure. The biotic or living component of an ecosystem can be classified on the basis of how the organisms get their food. Producers are those organisms which make their own food, for example, green plants. Consumers are the organisms that depend on other organisms for food. It is also known as heterotrophs. Consumers can be classified as herbivorous, carnivorous and omnivorous. Herbivores eat only plants and plant products, for example cows, deer and rabbits. Carnivores eat only the fleshes of other animals, for example tigers, snakes and hawks. Omnivores eat plants as well as flesh of other animals, for example man and crow. Decomposers are the organisms which feed on dead plants and animals. They are also called saprotrophs or saprophytes. They include bacteria, fungi and worms. For an ecosystem to work, there has to be flow of energy within it. The organisms of the ecosystem need energy in the form of food. The ultimate source of this energy is the sun. Producers like green plants trap solar energy and convert it into the chemical energy of food. When a primary consumer eats the producer, a part of this energy is passed on to it. The primary consumer is then eaten by a secondary consumer, and the secondary consumer may be eaten by a tertiary consumer, and so on. In this way, energy gets transferred from one consumer to the next higher level of consumer. A series of organisms through which food energy flows in an ecosystem is called a food chain. A food chain is a linear arrangement of animals. It does not give a complete picture of the feeding relationship among the different organisms of an ecosystem because many of them eat more than one kind of food. A food web is a series of interconnected food chains representing the feeding relationships of the organisms within an ecosystem. Sometimes it is useful to study an ecosystem by grouping its organisms by their positions or levels in food chains. A level or position in a food chain is called a trophic level. A particular trophic level consists of the organisms that occupy the same position in food chains. Energy and materials are transferred from one trophic level to another. The producers in a food chain are the first trophic level. The herbivores which feed upon the plants are at the second trophic level. The carnivores which feed upon herbivores are at the third trophic level, and so on. So each trophic level supports the one above it in terms of food. As we know that there is a flow of energy in the form of food within an ecosystem, the flow of this energy is unidirectional. That is, it flows in one direction from the producers to the consumers at successively higher trophic level. Green plants absorb a very small fraction, about 1% of the solar energy reaching the outer part of the atmosphere. Through photosynthesis, they convert this energy into chemical energy, which is stored as food. A part of the trapped energy is used to plant in metabolic activities like the growth of new tissues, and a part of it is lost into the surroundings as heat. The remaining energy is available as food to primary consumers. Thus, we see that only a fraction of the energy absorbed by plants is finally available to the next trophic level. When primary consumers like deer eat plants, they get the available energy in plants. Some of this energy is used for activities like moving, digesting, etc., and some of it is lost as heat. Only about 10% of the available energy in the food gets transformed into new tissues of the deer. This is available to the carnivores at the next trophic level. At this level too, the usage, loss and storage of energy flow the same pattern, and this continues at every trophic level. Apart from this, energy from dead plants and animals is transferred to the decomposers. We find that when energy flows from the producers to the consumers at different trophic levels, there is a loss of energy at each trophic level. It has been found that only about 10% of the energy available to the trophic level is transferred to the next higher level. This is called the 10% law. Producers like plants and algae take in nutrients from their surroundings. Sometimes they also take in harmful chemicals along with the other nutrients. These harmful chemicals include compounds of mercury and chemicals like DDT, which is widely used to kill mosquitoes. These chemicals cannot be broken down by plants and other organisms, so they accumulate in their bodies. Since organisms at a higher trophic level eat many lower level organisms, the amount of chemicals entering their bodies increases. Thus, as the chemical pass on from one level to the next in the food chain, the amount of chemicals accumulated in organisms at each level increases. The progressive increase in the accumulation of a harmful substance in organisms at successively higher trophic levels is called biological magnification or biomagnification. It has been observed that birds in which DDT has accumulated lay eggs with very thin shells that break easily even before chicks are born. This affects the growth of their population. In Japan, a mercury compound from the factory was dumped in the waters of Minamata Bay. The mercury found its way to humans who ate fish in which mercury had accumulated. More than 1,000 people died as a result. Human activities can have a harmful effect on the environment. A large number of environmental problems arise due to the wastes we generate and the substances like CFC, that is chlorofluorocarbons, that we release into the environment. High above the surface of the earth, There is a layer in the atmosphere that is rich in ozone. Ozone, which is made up of three atoms of oxygen, affects our respiratory system. However, the layer of ozone in the atmosphere protects us by absorbing the ultraviolet radiation from the sun. This prevents the harmful ultraviolet radiation from reaching the surface of the earth. Ultraviolet radiation can cause skin cancer and cataract. It also affects plants. Ozone is formed at the higher levels of the atmosphere. When ultraviolet radiation falls an oxygen molecule, the high energy of UV radiation splits molecular oxygen into free oxygen atoms. These atoms then combine with the molecular oxygen to form ozone. Unfortunately, the amount of ozone in the ozone layer is being depleted due to the release of certain chemicals into the atmosphere. Among these chemicals are chlorofluorocarbons, which are made of carbon, fluorine, and chlorine. CFC, that is chlorofluorocarbon, are used in air conditioners, refrigerators, aerosols, sprays, saving foam, fire extinguisher, etc. These compounds rise up high in the atmosphere and break down to form chlorine atoms. These chlorine atoms react with the ozone to form oxygen. As ozone gets converted to oxygen, the amount of ozone in the ozone layer decreases. Over time, this has created an ozone deficient area in the atmosphere. This area is called the ozone hole. This is most noticeable over Antarctica. To stop the damage to the ozone layer, the United Nations Environment Programme (UNEP) brought forward an agreement in 1987 to freeze the CFC production at the 1986 level. It is now mandatory for all the manufacturing companies to make CFC-free refrigerators throughout the world. Management of garbage and sewage involves collecting, transporting, and disposing waste. Garbage is collected by municipal bodies or private agencies. In many cities, garbage disposal bins are provided in each neighborhood. There may be separate bins for biodegradable kitchen waste and for recyclable materials like paper, glass, metals, and plastics. Collected garbage is transported to disposal sites by special trucks or tractors. Recyclable solid waste is sent for recycling. The rest is used to fill up land at landfill sites. Sometimes the solid waste is burnt. This is especially so for hospital waste and waste that can pollute the soil. Sewage is carried by pipes to sewage treatment plants. Here, the sewage is filtered and the organic material in the sewage is allowed to settle down and decompose in large tanks. In some places, sewage is used to produce biogas used for cooking and electricity generation.